Hey everybody, and welcome to the first video in a series of videos I'm trying to do on the basics of witchcraft, but for people who are even advanced practitioners, because we all get comfortable in what we do and kind of lose sight of the spiritual elements in what we do. Sometimes it can become easy to forget the spiritual part of our practice when we're doing it every day, and it sort of loses its flavor over time. And so that's kind of what I'm hoping this series is going to address. Now, this is my first time doing a video like this, and it's a little disconcerting being able to see myself as I record myself, so I'm trying to just move past that part of things. Also, I tried to do a YouTube live stream of this, but didn't realize I was going to run into a roadblock where YouTube makes you wait 24 hours before you're allowed to live stream. So, hey, we're going to get it done. Going to get it done because I said I'd get it done, and so that's what we're doing. Today's topic is going to be journaling. Journaling is something I think just about every Wiccan does at the very beginning of their practice. I mean, I think it's one of the first things that we all learn to do, and we get to a point where we're comfortable with it. And I think if you're like most people, you journal now and then you forget, and then you don't do it for a few months, and then you pick it back up. And so I think that's how it goes for everybody. So if that's your experience, then that's my experience. I'm pretty sure that's everybody's experience, so don't let that discourage you from continuing on. So here is my stack of some of my journals, just to give you an idea. This is just a portion of them. So when I started practicing, I had no money because I was in high school and I didn't have a job. So I didn't really have a journal for my first year or two, other than maybe loose pieces of paper that I've lost over time. The first journal I acquired was this one. This is from 2001, 2002, and it's one of these cloth-bound ones that I got from Barnes & Noble at the time for $10, it says. And this became my first journal, BOS, and pretty much everything book when I started out. And the interesting part of journals is that as you go through them, you can see different... It's almost like when archaeologists are going down through strata, you can see how your practice progresses. So here's when I started out. Here's when I was reading Cunningham. Here's when I was reading Buckland. Here's stuff that I pulled out of Cunningham. Here's stuff that I pulled out of like Gramassi or whatever. As you're going through like little bits and pieces, exercises and things, you can see ideas you're having. You can see like the influences of authors and different ideas you're bumping into, kind of like build up throughout time through your journals. So I think that's pretty interesting. And the other interesting part is that there is a difference really between journals and a book of shadows. Most of more advanced practitioners realize this already, but people starting out might not realize it. They'll think that your journal is your book of shadows, your book of shadows is your journal. I really think a journal is just your thoughts about how things are going. Your book of shadows is a workbook of how things have settled, how the dust has settled, the things that you figured out. So things in your journal will ultimately at some point move into your book of shadows, but a journal is kind of your starting place and reflections on where you're working. So I'm going to talk about the layouts that I use currently and kind of how we got here. So my current layout for how I do my journal is I have a moon phase in there. I have the sign that the moon is in. So these are important factors when doing spellcraft and when understanding the energetic tides that are around you. I'll have things like the weather sometimes I'll put in there. I'll have whatever tarot or oracle card pulls I do for the day. I'll incorporate them into my journal. And then I'll have a running section of just thoughts, things that come up, ideas I have, thoughts I have. If I'm working with spirits, it'll be any type of spirit communication. Stuff from my guides will end up thrown in there. And a lot of times it will go like a few days without writing anything, and then there'll be a month with writing tons of things every single day. And so that's just how the process goes. And you see a big stack of journals like this, you'll think, wow, he filled all those journals, but these journals are not all filled. These journals are a complete hodgepodge of madness. You can see in some sections I was writing in all runes, just because why not? And then not, and then it's 2017, and then it switches to 2018, and I started journal half of it's 1 year, and then it jumps to a different year. So that is just kind of what the way it goes. Now, recently I moved into a digital journal, and the reason I did that was because with my physical journals, although they're very nice and like self-contained, and you flip through them and that's cool and whatnot, they're sort of unwieldy and hard to store, and you can't search through them. So I know there's something somewhere in this pile, but I have no idea where it is. And I had to do a lot of flipping around to find it. So I switched to a digital journal. I do it in an app called Joplin. And Joplin, I'll put a link somewhere in this video description, is a free app. It's open source. It's encrypted. You can use whatever backend you want. You want to use Dropbox? You want to use OwnCloud? You want to use Google Drive, or do you want to use Joplin's own backend? You can use whatever backend to sync your notes that you want, and it allows you to search through them, organize them. I have my working book of shadows in there as well. So like spells I come up with as I'm working through them, I keep them in Joplin as I'm taking notes on them and tinkering, and it stays in there. And then once it gets finalized, it moves into my permanent book of shadows, which I'll do maybe another video on books of shadows, because they're their own subject, really. So in my Joplin, what I have is I have a notebook, which is journals, and then sub notebooks, which are the years, and then sub notebooks in those sub notebooks, which are the months, and then I have a template that I made, and I'll show a mock-up of the template in this video. But the template, what I do is I duplicate it every day, and then I just have to fill it in. And so in the template, I have my life path number in there and everything. So it basically gives me a nice running record of everything that I'm working on. And then you can click through Joplin like you would flip through the pages of a notebook. So it has that feeling to it, rather than like Google Docs, which Google Docs you have to do a bunch of clicking around. Or I even tried at one point to have like just one big doc and just kind of go through it. But that didn't work out too well. To bring it back around, what you need to do with your journal, though, is you need to look back through it. And this is like the big thing that I think some people miss. Once a week, I'll look back through my last week's worth of entries, if I have a week's worth of entries. But I'll look back through my last week's worth of entries, and then I'll write a summary of how things have moved through that past week. So then I'll have a summary for our days X through Y, and it just allows me to reculminate the things that I'm working through and build momentum for the next week and understand kind of how my journey is progressing. And that lends a lot more usefulness to the journaling, because journaling can become this exercise where you're writing things down and never looking at it again and never thinking about it again until maybe years later when you pull it back up and you read the cringeworthy stuff that you wrote when you were a teenager or something like that, which I definitely have my share number of cringeworthy journal entries in the course of these journals that I'm like, oh gosh. So yeah, that's always fun. You'll see your progress. For sure with your journaling. The real thing about journaling is to use it as a workbook and a self-reflection point, and to not stress out about it, because that's the thing that can happen is people can stress out about needing to do a journal entry every day, and it's completely not necessarily unless you want to, and it's much better to spend your time the way you want to than doing these journal entries all the time. So focus on doing it as part of your practice to enjoy, as part of your practice to help you move forward. Realize that sometimes you move forward and sometimes you are where you are, and sometimes you need to take a few steps back, and your journal can help you with all those things, and all those realities are good. So that's where I would leave it for now. I hope you enjoyed the content in this video. Don't forget to like and subscribe. And if you're on Facebook, as long as you're following our Facebook group, you'll get any videos I post there. So until next time, may you blessed be.